Hello everybody and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to talk about why Age of Sigmar is the best game that Games Workshop makes. That is right, Age of Sigmar, by far the greatest game that Games Workshop has ever made. Not only for the miniatures, the game and the lore and the setting are by far amazing and so good. Now, as a quick disclaimer, this is my opinion. I am entitled to my opinion and I am sharing my opinion. If you do not like my opinion, you are free to drop to the comment section and tell me why you don't agree with my opinion. You can tell me why you like 40k, Blood Bowl, Adeptus Mechanicus, Heresy, or even the Old World. You can tell me in any shape, way you want, why these games that you think are better than Age of Sigmar. But, on a caveat, if you're going to come up with things like Age of Sigmar is just full of Sigmarines and it's the Age of Shitmar, then I'm really not going to bother engaging with comments like that because it's pretty low-hanging fruit. So you kind of come up with a little bit of thought for your comments on why you don't like Age of Sigmar, or why you do like Age of Sigmar. But anyway, let's get into the video. So first things first, Age of Sigmar. How did it come about? Well, 8 years ago, Games Workshop were in a bit of problems when one of their flagship games, known as Warhammer Fantasy Battle, decided to tank. And there's a lot of reasons around why Games Workshop didn't really do very well with Warhammer Fantasy Battle and why Warhammer Fantasy Battle tanked overall. And there's a lot of nuance. There's Preach over on the painting phase has talked about this and a number of the reasons. But basically, at the end of the day, the game wasn't making the company money. Brushes and paints and other accessories and things were making Games Workshop more money. And that's after the fact that they'd invested money into creating plastic kits for some of the newer factions that had come out for 8th edition. Was 8th edition a good game? Personally, I stopped playing Fantasy Battle in 8th edition because they removed the guess ranges for artillery, and at the time I was a dwarf player. And that really annoyed me because it was one of the aspects of the Old World and Fantasy Battle that I really enjoyed, which was guessing the ranges and having to memorize how far units were and paying attention to what my opponent was doing with his movement. So, yes, it died. So, once they killed the game, they come up with this new setting, this new game, and they called it Age of Sigmar. Initially at launch, it was very weird. It was a very weird first 12 months of the game. There was no points. Like, straight out the bat, there was no points. There was no real force organization chart either. It was kind of like just bring whatever you want to your games. And so games were really crazy this first year. And it was very narrative driven, which was a really cool thing. At the time, 40k wasn't really, and it still really isn't that narratively driven. But Age of Sigmar releases in that first year were built around a narrative. You had like campaign books that were coming out with your rules and stuff like that for your factions, and it was brilliant. Now, obviously, this all changed when they come out with the General's Handbook, and the General's Handbook has become now a mainstay of the game. Every year, 6 months, which we've had previously in this edition, the General's Handbook has come out, and it's kind of sort of like changed how the game plays at the competitive level with some little match play nuances. Well, it used to have match play stuff in it. I still have my very first General's Handbook, and it was really good. Now, it changed the game in a big way because it brought in points. And those points obviously dictated how armies were going to be built. And we even got a force organization chart, which even now in 3rd edition still hasn't changed. But why does this make it the best game? Well, for one of the main reasons why I personally think Age of Sigmar is probably one of the best games Games Workshop makes is Games Workshop are pretty much free to do whatever they want. Now, this is a setting that is 8 years old. Now, bearing in mind, if you look at 40k, 40k is what? 30 years old, over 30 years old. Like, it come out in like the late 80s. I know I still have my original rulebook, which I bought in 1988 with my pocket money. And I'm an old man. I'm like mid-40s now. But there's a lot have happened, and a lot of things happened in in Warhammer 40k over the last 30 years. We've had story arcs, we've had characters come and go, we've had various things happen. But one of the biggest things that 40k had for a lot of its time, and Warhammer Fantasy Battle had a lot of the time, is that the background was kind of stagnant. They never really went anywhere. They were kind of, for a long time, especially for 40k, we were stuck in this sort of 1 second to midnight type scenario where everything was going to go pear-shaped. We had things like the 13th Black Crusade, which we had this big global campaign, which was ultimately really good and was going to bring so much new things to the game and the setting, only for Games Workshop to say it was a draw, go back on everything that they'd said they were going to do, and ultimately, eventually, retconned it with what then come out at the end of 8th edition, with the Citrus Maledictum splitting the galaxy in two. But it's only been lately, these past couple of editions in 40k, that the storyline has progressed forward. Obviously, we've had new things like the Votann, the Primaris, being sort of added as well, which is kind of cool. But Age of Sigmar is literally a blank slate. It's a blank slate. It is a slate that is literally clean, and then they can build upon that. And at the very start, the story wasn't good. And what was kind of good in a way was that you could see as they progressed and built upon the setting, with the new factions coming in, like the Fire Slayers and the Sylvaneth and the Caradhran Overlords, that they had this weird style that they were coming up with. The Stormcast were developing as they were going, because they are basically the super soldiers of the setting. Yes, they are Space Marines in fantasy. If that's your thing, like, just get over it. It's what they are. They're not genetically enhanced super soldiers. They're enhanced by magic. Rah, rah, rah. We heard it all before. Not interested. But that's the nuance of the setting. Now, bear in mind, now this is a crazy part of a setting that you have water elves that ride eels and turtles into battle, and you also have other crazy factions like the Lumineth Realm Lords that have giant mountain cows and go to war riding kangaroos. Those things alone just makes the setting so much cooler. Now, there are a lot of things in the setting that is kind of nice. And what's really cool is the story arc that is weaved through it. Now, right now, we're in the realm of Gur. Hopefully, will disappear in 4th edition, which is apparently out next year. Will come with a whole host of new stories, and we'll come into a new realm, and it will be kind of cool. Now, one of the things that I would like to see happen is really sort of delve into some of those unknown factions that we don't really get a lot of love for, and I really would like them to switch their focus from Stormcast to the Cities of Sigmar, because the Cities of Sigmar are amazing, and they're the bog standard human, and this gives them that element of sort of seeing yourself in the setting, because like, you're not going to see yourself as a Space Marine or a Stormcast Eternal, but as a little lonely steel helm in the shield wall line of a Cities of Sigmar army. Yeah, you could definitely see yourself in that, kind of like you do with the Imperial Guard. But yeah, it is a good game. Now, mechanically and gameplay wise, this game is by far so good. It is way better than 40k. Now, I used to be a 40k player for a very, very long time, and I played a lot of 40k right up until 7th edition, when I started playing the Horus Heresy, because I kind of got sick of how 40k main game was going with all of the big formations and how unwieldy the game was. It was just crazy, crazy, crazy. I tried to get back into 40k with 8th and 9th edition, and I am trying to get back into 40k in 10th edition by painting myself up a Howling Griffin's army. But one of the things that I've stuck with since it came out has been Age of Sigmar. And Age of Sigmar is now my main game. And the reason for that is I enjoy playing Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is a fun game to play. It is very simple to pick up. It is not overly complex, but it is complex, and it has a lot of nuance and cool stuff that is built into the war scrolls, and then you have all of these different layers over the top. So basically, you can essentially play the game with just your battle tool. You can get your rules for free on the app, or download them from Games Workshop, and you can just play straight away. You don't need the General's Handbook. The General's Handbook is there mainly for competitive play. So if you're mainly a narrative player, you don't need it. You've got like a Path to Glory and your narrative element of the game already there, and it kind of plays slightly different. The game itself plays the same, but sort of the battle scenarios and stuff play very differently. Competitively, I would say the game is far more balanced than 40k currently. The factions seem to be quite good. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some craziness in some crazy builds, and you would probably get that in a lot of gaming systems. 40k is no stranger to that, and Age of Sigmar certainly has that. Certain builds and certain books which are nuts. Like right now, a lot of people are complaining about Cities of Sigmar and the Fusiliers and what they can do. Yes, bringing a block of 30 and having a general stood next to them with a number of items can pump out 32 shots doing mortal wounds on 6s. Sorry, 62 shots doing mortal wounds on 6s and hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage each. That is really crazy. And yes, whichever what they point their guns at is probably going to die. But on the flip side, you also have an army that is literally just going to summon a great demon of Tzeentch on turn 1 because they've done whatever they need to do to get the 9 points to be able to do it. And then they're going to spam quite a few more of those greater demons. And one greater demon is a nightmare to deal with at the best of times, and this army can have several. Yeah, so there are some crazy builds out there. But that's competitive play, and that's what you kind of expect in tournaments. But on the flip side of that, a lot of armies can go in. Now, straight away, I know what some of you are going to say, but it has the double turn. Yes, Age of Sigmar has a double turn. But that, I think, also gives it a little bit of charm and a little bit of awesomeness because it's different. Now, I'm going to explain on this. 40k, right now, you roll a dice at the start of the game. Whoever wins that dice roll goes first. There's no decision in that. You roll a dice, you win, you go first. There's no seizing of the initiative. There is no sort of, maybe I would like to go second. Now, if your army is an army that is built for the Alpha Strike, and what that means is you are built for that turn 1 maximum firepower coming out to obliterate. If you've won that roll, there's a good chance that you're going to do pretty well. And one of the things that I always didn't like about 40k was the fact that some games could be decided on one dice roll at the very beginning of the game of who goes first and who goes second. And in a game where some armies can be extremely powerful in the shooting phase, I always felt that sometimes when playing against some armies that you were always on the back foot and you always had to react to what your opponents were doing rather than be the one to make them react to you. With Age of Sigmar, you can do that. Now, obviously, you have the double turn, which is something that you can never, ever plan for. You can never sort of go, ooh, I'm going into this hoping for the double turn. Everyone always hopes for the double turn, but you can't rely on getting it. And you can never rely on, like, your opponent getting it and you being able to defend it. What you have to be able to do with the double turn is survive it. And it allows you to adapt to it. And it also allows armies that are not going to be necessarily great on the alpha to have that chance of being able to come back. There's nothing worse than playing a game and getting absolutely the shit kicked out of you on turn 1, and then for the next 2 turns going, I can't win this no matter what I do. In Age of Sigmar, the game system at least gives you that chance to try to turn it around and get the upper hand and at least bring things even. And that's why the double turn is cool. You don't have to like it, you just have to survive it. and adapt to it. And that thing, for me, that's why I really enjoy Age of Sigmar, because it's not completely set in stone. It's not, you're going to go, I'm going to have to react to it. You're going to go, I'm going to react to it. There's something really cool about that initiative. You can sit there and go, if I don't get the double turn now, I'm screwed. Or if I get the double turn, I could win this. And it's really, really cool. It's like, if I get initiative, I've got this. You know, that's what I really love about it. So there's a lot of cool things with Age of Sigmar. It also gets a lot of hate. And it gets a lot of hate from people that are really angry that Games Workshop killed the game system that they're now bringing back 8 years ago. Was Fantasy Battle good? Not really. Was Fantasy Battle the cutting edge of gaming? No. Was it an amazing, diverse, lore-building background? No, it was pretty stagnant. Had some pretty good books in it, like Gotrek and Felix and some of the other stories and stuff in it, but in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty much the same. Chaos was coming from the north, the Orcs were coming from the south, and Nagash was being a dick. And that was pretty much fantasy. Now, I think fantasy is kind of being kept alive for things like the Total War games, and I'm a lover of playing Total War 3. I really enjoy it. But I would say that the only reason why Warhammer Fantasy Battle over the last 8 years has had any semblance of relevance in any conversation when it comes to tabletop wargaming is because of that computer game. If it wasn't for Warhammer Total War 3 or Total 1 or 2, would the old world be coming back? Probably not. Games Workshop probably would have killed it, shelved the idea 100% and just continued moving forward with Age of Sigmar. Is the old world going to do well? Maybe. It may well sell well in regards to the people that are really pissed off that it went in the first place, and they've still got armies and they haven't burnt them in out of a fit of rage. So yeah, it might do. Is it going to do as well as Age of Sigmar? Most definitely not. Age of Sigmar now has got a very, very healthy player base and a very, very healthy community. And it is an amazingly good community. I would say, hands down, that the community is a lot better than the 40k. And that's from personal experience of just looking at my local communities here. The Age of Sigmar community is amazing. So I'm not overly worried about for fantasy doing any sort of revival. I think it's going to be very much like the Horus Heresy in regards to that it'll be a niche game inside of a niche hobby. Will it do as well as the Horus Heresy? Probably not. I think the Horus Heresy is huge, and the reason why is it has an amazing set of novels. Maybe the old world, that's what the old world needs. Maybe they need to start doing a series of old world style novels based in the time period that they're going to be setting the game in, and fleshing that out with characters and lore and everything else, and maybe that will do the gaming system a world of good. Age of Sigmar had that at the very beginning. We had the Realmgate Wars books, and that was an amazing read. I mean, the game come out with a box set with Stormcast Eternals against the new look Khorne. It come out with like a sort of big fat book, which was basically like, here's Age of Sigmar. It wasn't a rule book, but it wasn't really a campaign book. And you got this little novella, the Realmgate Wars, the Gates of Azir, and it was basically the story of that box set. It was the Stormcast Eternals trying to open the Realmgate. And then we got the Realmgate War series, which was like, what, 8 books long? And it was just so good. And it just built this setting up so well. And it was really, really awesome. And we've had that ever since. We've had other books that have come out. I would say that they don't write as enough Age of Sigmar books compared to 40k. And it would be nice to see. Like, the 40k have got like the Dawn of Fire series, which is currently going on. They have different series for different Space Marine chapters. We haven't really had that for Age of Sigmar, and I would love to see Games Workshop do that sort of Black Library love for Age of Sigmar like they do for 40k. But yeah, this is I'm going to wrap it up now. So this is why I would say that this game is, for me, the best game that Age of Sigmar does. And I'm not even looking at Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, great system, love Tolkien, great setting, but for me, Age of Sigmar tops it, because Age of Sigmar is crazy high fantasy that just has some really awesome stuff in it. That has some of the best miniatures that Games Workshop do. It has one of the best rule sets that Games Workshop does, and it has a lore and background that is constantly building and developing and opening up and just becoming this amazing story and this amazing place that encapsulates the imagination. Like, how awesome is it that we're playing in essentially a load of realms based on the old tables for Magic? So we're playing in like the lore of metal, the lore of light. That we're you know, it's so cool, and it really gets the mind sort of like, this is just so awesome, and the game is just so good. So yeah, that's why Age of Sigmar is the best game that Games Workshop makes. And yeah, I'll fight anyone for it. Get your dice, get your army on the table, and let's go. I'll anytime, any place you want. So, if you like my content, please feel free to check out my members area. And yeah, and a big shout out to my OG member, Mrs. Pointy. Come on, boys and girls, you can't let my girlfriend be the only one that supports me in the members area. Like, seriously. Also, live streaming, you get a green name. So yeah, you can check that out. It's really cool. There's going to be content every month. Right now, I'm started working on the next month's video, and it's going to be a 40k themed video. And then in the start of the new year, I'm going to be doing a Age of Sigmar one, and we're going to be bouncing it back. And if we get enough members and they request it, we might even look at something like a Horus Heresy or a Blood Bowl miniature, or even an Old World miniature, if that takes your fancy. Also, if you don't want to financially sort of throw money at the channel to support me, you can do it the cheap way, which is to hit the subscribe button. Massively helps. Drop a comment, tell me why I'm wrong, and also ring that bell. And like and share the video, and the algorithm gods will love it. So thank you very much to everybody who has supported so far. Thank you. And Mrs. Pointy, the OG, you're awesome. See you later.